welcome to a 2018 Acura MDX that's doing a little bit of self-driving here. Of course, it's a level 2 system, so for those that don't want to listen to me kind of give an overview and my thoughts about it, you can just turn down that volume button and you can just watch it drive. So for those not familiar, mounted on the windshield is the Comma 2. It's an open source self-driving system. That the hardware itself is not open source. That's closed source by Comma AI, but the underlying software that runs it is an open source platform, and they've been working on basically kind of like a self-driving platform for like the aftermarket, basically, kind of on par with like a higher end level 2 system. So features like lane keeping assist and automated cruise control. Now, the Comma 2 is actually system is actually compatible with quite a few vehicles. And how it works in general is that up here is the this like camera unit, right, in the system, and that's the camera unit is used for the lane keeping assist, and then there's the automated cruise control, and that's like a radar system. And so what the Comma does is it plugs into that harness and sort of it helps enhance it by adding some signals. Basically, they kind of jump into that communication and give a little bit better control in terms of the steering and the automated cruise control. That's kind of like a very high level. It works basically that way, but there's some other details there. Historically, it hasn't worked for certain Honda vehicles and Acura vehicles that have used a NIDEX system with what they call the serial steering. Basically, the electronic power steering system that is driving that's turning the wheel here. It uses a serial communication system, a LIN communication, and unfortunately the Comma 2 only works with CAN systems. And so two fairly intelligent people developed a little board up there that basically allows you to convert those LIN signals to CAN signals so that it can work in communicating with the Comma 2. And it does work. It works quite well. So we're driving here. I'm going to speed up a little bit. It works basically just like any other cruise control, just like the automated systems in this. You just hit the set button down to enable cruise control, and you can accelerate and do that stuff. Now, obviously the lane keeping is quite nice. It removes the requirement to have to actually touch the steering wheel every 30 seconds for the stock Acura system. Now, it does not also have navigation, so I'm going to have to tell it to go straight. I'm just going to kind of hold the steering wheel there for a second. In fact, I actually have to move over a lane here too, because it's line land. And so, where was I at? Okay, yeah, so the automated lane keeping system, way better. It has pretty good torque. One of the limitations is that it's limited to the stock steering torque of the Acura, which can turn pretty well, but it's not like, you're basically not going to be able to like go at a corner like 90 miles an hour, which is good and bad. I mean, good because that you want it within some like stable and controllable region. You don't want it to suddenly make large lane changes. But it's really good. It's way better than the factory system. No more ping-ponging. It handles, the right-hand exits. It doesn't try to drive into the right-hand exits. It has automated lane changes like that. And then so that's really good. I think the place that it needs some improvement, and it's only this particular branch that I'm running is like roughly about 0.8.3, is that the longitudinal control, that's what they call the automated cruise control type function, it needs a little love. It basically has a really long following distance, about 2 seconds, and it really doesn't use that, at least in my experience with this vehicle. Maybe there's some tuning that I can improve with it. It kind of is a little too aggressive in holding that 2 seconds. So like, even if the car is slowly slowing down, closing the gap a little bit, it holds that 2 seconds as if it has to. So it's kind of funny. So it needs a little bit of love there. But in terms of like highway use or road trip use, it's really good. And then one thing is it has a driver assistance system, or a driver monitoring system here. So there's 2 infrared LEDs that are shining and illuminating my face. So there's a camera that's watching my face. And so if I don't pay attention to the road, it's going to disengage and beep at me and yell at me. And so you can't really, kind of like Tesla style, put the weight on the wheel or kind of tricks like that. It is watching your face. And I think Consumer Reports actually had worked with Owenpile and reviewed it, had given, I think, one of the highest levels in terms of like their, rating levels in terms of their driver monitoring system. So it works really well. And I think it's a great safety feature because it really keeps you honest about focused on the road if you get drowsy and stuff like that. So yeah, this is it. And I'll just be quiet and you can enjoy the ride. Hopefully they fix that in the future. It's like that 2-second following distances in low traffic conditions, it's totally fine. But in conditions like, you know, stop and go traffic and stuff like that, it's like, I don't know, it gets to be a little hard to work with, and people just cut in front of you, and then your 2 seconds follows back. So you basically are constantly slowing down. So that can be a little frustrating. I hope they fix that. And there's a plan to do what they call end-to-end, where basically the full control of that ACC is all part of a, you know, a machine learning or neural net or whatever. I'm not exactly sure what they're using there, but basically there's no hard-coded logic inside of it, rules-based type stuff. So we'll take South 77 here. This is a fun little thing. I do have to, I'll slow it down. We'll slow down to 50 miles an hour. And this one can, this can take the turn kind of pretty much no problem at 50. You can kind of see that it's a nice gentle right and left turn. No problem at all. In fact, we can probably go 55. Let's try 55. I do have to slow down for the next turn. So eventually we'll hit the limit of the steering torque on the Acura. And so I'm going to cover the wheel here because I still don't. You always have to assume it's trying to kill you. That's the best way to drive with it. So we'll slow down to 40 here. The problem is this has a really sharp right turn. So we'll go to 45. That's the recommended speed for that. We'll see what happens. What's going to happen is that it's basically a really sharp right, and it just exceeds the torque limit on this. Well, let's see here. Here we go. Yeah, so there we go. As soon as I hit the gas, it just couldn't quite hold it. But once we're into the turn, so there are some limitations. So really sharp corners like that. So you're never going to be able to get this vehicle to be like full self-driving in terms of like urban and stuff like that. That's just the torque isn't available in the system as it stands now. And for my use case, it's mostly just highway and road trips, so I don't really have an issue with that. It definitely makes it much nicer to drive. So I can also do a jerk test. No one's around me right now, so if I kind of get it off center for the wheel and just kind of jerk test it, the center's pretty quickly. I guess it should, you know, settles pretty fast if you jerk the wheel. Well, probably too much because it's probably not going to settle you back in there. It's maybe a little bit underdamped. I was still working on the steering tuning, just trying to get it nice and smooth. My PID values are quite a bit different than other people, so I'm not sure if it's my vehicle or just how I tuned it. But yeah, so this is a little trip through Minneapolis here in a level 2 with driver monitoring vehicle. That 2-second gap. So that can be a little frustrating, you know, as it builds that 2-second gap, and now we're speeding up again. Is that just leaves people open to cut in front of you, and every time a car gets in front of you, then you got to get 2 seconds to that car, and so that's a little frustrating. But I see a lot of potential in it, and for highway use, it's totally fine. You'll see this car cuts in front of me. We're going to slow down here. signal. I still gotta try to understand exactly how it works. Definitely not going to be able to handle this turn coming up. I'll have a car coming on the right hand side here too, so that'll bring a little bit of trouble. In general, it's just not going to have the torque. So we'll see if we can do. Now, what is one thing nice about it is that you can, unlike Tesla, still turn the wheel in. And then right there, like, so you just jammed on the brakes there. So the longitude, the ACC needs a lot. Is it any worse than the stock? No, because the stock Acura system sucks too. So I look forward to when they upgrade it. It'll be a really nice upgrade. So how good is it? You know, kind of tough conditions. So there's a construction site here. It'll be the final test, and then we'll call it. So you can see a nice sunset as we roll into downtown Minneapolis. So that needs a little love, and it could be my because you know you have to fork the code and fit it into the MDX, and there's some tuning parameters and some other stuff. So it's possible that I don't have it quite dialed yet either in terms of that behavior. Why I think this is a good test for those who are interested. So we got dusk. It's a construction zone with very poorly painted lines. This is not the laneless model. That is an available option. I have it on the normal laned model, which seems to work just fine for everything. I really, you know, on highway use, I have not seen a big difference between the laneless model and regular. So, but yeah, I think it's a good test. Sees that semi truck, so I took over, hit the gas. Otherwise, it'll just keep slowing down until I'm fully in this lane, and then it disengages from that truck. So that could be a little frustrating there. 60 here. So here's a great example. So we're going to come in. We'll see if Comma has a great cone guy. If they're detecting cones, and they're not. It's kind of an inside joke, I guess, with the Comma team about Tesla and Waymo have like people that are devoted to just detecting the different types of traffic cones. So I'm going to take the steering wheel because I want to make sure that it stays on this fork here. It looks like it's doing very well. Excellent. You should always assume it's trying to kill you. And here's this turn here. Let's see how it does. No problem at all. Now this is fun because we're off camber. It's fighting hard to the right there because the concrete's all messed up. We got tight lanes, construction. A car that's going to probably cut in front of me. Detected the cut and it's slowing down, hitting the brakes. It's letting that 2 second pull out, which I wish it was just like 1 second. And now we're back on the gas. I wish it was detecting that the car was pulling away from you, right? Like if it knew that it was increasing the gap, it shouldn't have to slow down to do that. It should just let the gap form by the delta velocity, the difference in the velocity between the two vehicles. But I guess they need some more work. Mounting setup so that I kind of, because this car is so wide, the only other complaint I have about the Comma is that the wide angle, the camera, the driver facing camera isn't great, and so on a wide car like this MDX, I'm like right at the edge of the frame, and so I have to make sure that I'm sitting like right in the middle. If I lean too far to the left, it won't detect me, so it's kind of it's a little bit of an annoyance. Lane markings, which has no problem. Manages that turn beautifully. road, cover the wheel if you need to get access to it, but you don't, you can just have your hands here. So definitely, their thing is, they call it driving chill.